Just wanted to welcome everyone to the ITCC security meeting on AI and security. We're really happy that everyone has joined us here. We have three panel members that will be introducing themselves momentarily. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew this is supposed to be a very interactive session. So although we do have some planned questions to ask the panel members, we really want people to verbally ask your question, or you can send it through the chat, and we'll be monitoring the chat to make sure that your question gets addressed. Stephanie and I are going to be working together, monitoring and taking care of this session. I want to introduce the three panel members. Shailu Tiparahu, I apologize if I've mispronounced.
You got it right.
Awesome. He's from Itcc. He's the co-founder and CTO. Derek Jensen from Pearson VUE, product strategist and senior product manager. And Ryan Blankenship from PSI is supposed to be joining us as well. He's the vice president of product management and global client solutions. Stephanie, I think to you.
Okay, thank you. So to get started, let's have each panelist introduce themselves. Maybe if in your introduction, you can give a little bit of background about your experience with AI, and then, and especially how it relates to security, since it's the focus of our task force. And then maybe a little bit about how you define AI. So I think that would be kind of a good foundation before we get into the other questions. So do you want to start, Derek?
Sure, thank you. Derek Jensen, I'm one of the product managers at Pearson VUE. And in particular, I've been spending a lot of my time thinking about how we're investing and integrating AI into our solutions. You know, how do you define AI? I was thinking about this question beforehand, and I hope this is in the spirit of this, but often when there's a lot of questions, particularly from the non-software developers, I really substitute the word automation, because I think a lot of the technical automation, it really is indistinguishable, or it doesn't really matter from what the question is coming from AI. Just a quick example. You know, we process images that the candidate submits, let's say the image of their driver's license or passport, and we check to make sure it's a good image. It's not blurry, and it's got good contrast. Does it matter if that technology is AI or not AI when you're getting questions about bias or security or whatever? So AI, I kind of think of it in the same vein as automation for a lot of questions. I think you had another question in there, but maybe that's enough to get started.
Yeah, no, that was perfect. I mean, that definitely gives us a good feel for your background. Shailu?
Pleased to be here, and the best discussions we can have in this topic, AI, is always conversations of where are we headed with this one. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer in my role at Itcc as a founding member. And if you think about where we provide our delivery of solutions through the Itcc environment, I see personally AI, and I think a lot of educators, I'm primarily an educator. I've been an education entrepreneur for my entire career, 24 years. And I think if we look at AI that has come into the foray right now, I see it as an enabler for the human desire for excellence, be it any arena, not see it as a replacement for anything, but as an enabler. If we look at it from that perspective, I think it answers a lot of questions on, it is there to assist you to be a better human. Just that angle tells us how we define it, how we perceive it, how we talk about it, how we use it as an integral part of our delivery. And I think even its research has come up with the top trends, and they use the word engineering trust is a new theme that's coming up. I think AI fundamentally belongs in it because the word trust is very precious. It's definitely in our industry, Stephanie would agree. And AI is one of the beacons of saying, how do we use it responsibly? How do we use it with the privacy and security concerns of the user in mind? And these discussions, I think I will learn quite a bit and be happy to share whatever we have learned, whatever I've learned, and pleased to be here. Thank you, Stephanie.
Yes, thank you. So for the rest of the questions that we have, I can go through them with the panel, but if anybody has any questions that they want to ask, just feel free to put them in the chat. We'll make sure that we see them, and Karen will ask the panel those as well. And or if during a response, somebody has a response that you want to get clarification on or have questions about, you can put it in the chat or you can speak up. So we definitely want this to be a discussion and not a formal presentation of any kind. So, so to get started, I think with some more specific questions, Derek, can you talk about how Pearson VUE uses AI in its solutions to improve security? So specifically around exam security, are there ways that you're implementing AI to improve security?
All right, come off mute. I want to acknowledge, Shayla, I love what you said about the human desire for excellence. That's really, that's a great comment. So I've been really involved in how we're using AI for our live proctoring solutions. And I don't have as elegant of a phrase as human desire for excellence. I often think about it as a backseat driver, where the live human is the one driving the car, hands on the steering wheel. And AI is an assistive technology that can tap the human on the shoulder to say, hey, there's somebody braking, make sure you're paying attention there. So what does that look like in proctoring? If you think about live proctoring as sort of two steps, one is what I think of as the greet process, or everything that's happening to qualify the candidate and the room that they're in. And so you can have AI do things like validate the driver's license, validate that the human is the human on the driver's license, making sure that you're collecting the right assets. And then during proctoring, of course, it's helping to monitor for actions, whether that's somebody leaving the frame, somebody coming in the frame, monitoring for things we don't like to see, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of opportunity, obviously, with AI, particularly if you just are thinking about it as assistive. What would help a human be excellent? That's a great way to think about it. So there's a lot of opportunity there.
And Shaylu, same question. How are you guys using AI to improve your security?
So if we break it down to 3 dimensions, I'll piggyback on something Derek has mentioned, because as an industry, we are offering commonly 3 key themes as we see it. And I think everyone in the industry sees it for remote online proctoring or in person, which is the identity of user is paramount to beginning that experience, the right user coming in to deliver and eligible for the right session. The second is the event integrity. Derek gave a few examples. Any event that happens either on the test environment, the user environment, or the user behavior, if you look at those 3 dimensions, if they are in line with the expected parameters of how the session should be, that's part of the event integrity, where AI is a significant enabler of the process to not make decisions, but enable decisions in that event integrity.
Yeah.
Webcam audio behavior, screen behaviors. And third is content security. AI has very, very powerful mechanisms on ensuring that the content of the environment test itself, the fidelity of the environment where the user is taking the test, and the data of the user. The privacy and security at the cornerstone of all this delivery. We're looking for something reliable, not just for the environment to be stable, but something the user trusts and feels the data I'm sharing as part of this experience is only limited for that purpose. Where AI comes in help is making sure you began with authenticating yourself. AI can have many ways to confirm the right user has come in. That data will be kept in a vault that you can trust. Data sovereignty is universal right now. I mean, we're talking about hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, and every flavor of cloud, Baskin Robbins cloud. But I think sovereign cloud is, I think, where we are going, which is each region has to feel this data security has been applied to my context. And I think AI gives those levers. It's how we use it, how we are able to share, but at the same token, security. So from an examity dimension, we want to make sure that these three, identity of user, event integrity, and content security, makes not only the test taker comfortable, but the test sponsor also comfortable that their data of the test has been kept secure and it's not out there post session. We're not trying to catch somebody doing the wrong thing. I think that has been the way this has begun, but really help them finish their process, but within the boundaries set for the test. And that is where AI applies in all three of these realms.
So when you talk about content security, you're talking about the content you're talking about is kind of the individual's responses and their results being secure, right?
And the user data. So I have shared some of my data. That data may not have been reported in the session. It may have been captured in the source of record, be it LMS, candidate management system. When I purchase the test, I have given some info. All of that, some elements come into a proctoring provider, some do not. But the fact that this is coming as a cohesive thing is how I see user content. And this, to your point, Stephanie, is a provider content, the test taker content, and the rules of the environment and how it should be. All of this I define broadly as content.
Okay. Do you do either of you in your online proctoring solutions, do you use AI to try and detect content that's been stolen in some way?
Derek, I'll let you go first. I have some ideas, but want to let you pick up any thought from your perspective.
Yeah, Stephanie, if I'm really understanding the intent of what you're asking, I think the short answer to that is no. Obviously, we're trying to make online proctoring has limitations of what you can do, particularly if you're just using the view of the webcam. So trying to make that session as secure as possible and doing what you can to secure the environment. But those are within the realms of really what humans are doing, and then the other non-AI technology like the secure browser. So I don't think there's a real specific AI angle here that we're pursuing at the moment.
Okay.
Similar thoughts. I think we want to make sure that we are the television on which the channel is playing. We don't want to go too deep into the program and the behavior of the actors and the data answers, etc. We are trying to not go into that sensitive topic of harvesting and mining the data. We want to stay one click away from that to say, we are here to provide a secure environment. You own the content of the environment. We are not doing anything with that. Taking it one step further, there are new technologies in the AI and non-AI that enable the test proctor, be it a machine or a person or a combination, to mask some of the data elements, but still be able to see the environment in place. So I may not see the specific answer. I may not see how the user arrived at the answer, but I'm just making sure that the screen is visible enough for me, secure browser, for example, as a way that they can take this content elsewhere or bring something else that was not pre-exam onboarding, if you will.
I like that view of looking at AI as an enabler. That keeps coming up here. And I just find that very, very interesting. Stephanie, there was a question in the chat to you. What type of detection are you inquiring about? I think when you originally were asking, did you have something specific in mind?
Yeah, I was thinking about like when content is stolen, using AI to identify that content was stolen. So more like probably in ways of web patrolling or or looking for items that are appearing on cheat sites or what have you. So that I was thinking more about it in that context and wondering if anyone's doing that. Is anyone, like Steve, I know you asked that question. Is that something that you guys do at Cavion at all?
Yeah, so we definitely have a whole business around looking for inappropriate sharing online of breached content. And we use a bunch of different search technologies that index in different ways, but we don't necessarily, we don't have AI. It's not,
Okay.
That's right.
it's just traditional
Okay.
search.
Yeah, okay. So question back to the panel. How has AI improved what you're able to offer? Have you seen your solution get better as you implement AI in new ways? Are you detecting more cheating? Are you preventing more cheating? Like, what have you seen as a result of implementing AI in the ways that you've talked about?
Well, I'll start, and I often think of AI being able to impact the business in maybe three ways. Number one is automation. Can you make the experience better for the candidate? Can you get them in faster? Can you get them in more seamlessly? Can you answer their questions that they have? So it's really applying AI around candidate experience. The second, of course, is the security. That's ensuring the candidate who they say they are and making sure they're not doing what they're not supposed to be doing. And then the third is there are new solutions that can be developed and new things that maybe you couldn't have done before. And those are maybe future things we're looking at. But the candidate experience and then, of course, security is top of mind.
Shilu?
There's a different extension of, we had a back to school event and there was a Zoom session where my youngest is 12, they kicked off. And one of the questions for parents coming in was, you explain AI to a 12-year-old because they're all going back to school. They heard about AI. And this meeting happened to happen the day after. So I said, why don't I use, if we are able to explain AI in a way for the industry that's understandable to the smartest generation, the current one, I said, there's really 4 flavors as I see AI. And I'm mentioning that because it applies to what we are trying to do at Examity as well. The first one is almost internet AI, which is Netflix or tailored content delivered to you, which is just using your consumption of data and responding to, this is tailored to you as information. Derek's example applies to user authentication. If there are specific elements we're using to authenticate a user, and if they're repeat users, we know their history. We have not tracked anything that is sensitive, but we're able to use their preferred way of authenticating and give them a TSA pre-approach. That is how we think of the basic internet AI / tailored content and recommendation of this seems to enhance the user experience. That's foundational. The second one in the business AI, as one click above, is enabling businesses to see patterns of usage, time to finish a test. Have they finished a test in 10 minutes and scored 100% when they're supposed to be 3 hours? Does it indicate pre-knowledge? So that's the business AI of taking data that's correlating existing data points between the test provider. That's the second layer. The third and the one sci-fi talk is on the perception AI of IoT devices, advanced webcams that can sense the sweat on your forehead and tell that you're stressed or you're cheating. And that's, I think, a lot of hype around it, but I think we have not gotten there to a point we can make decisions of pausing a test or resuming a test just based on perception AI. And that is thankfully why it's called artificial, because it's not naturally making decisions. It's helping us make those decisions that the behavior of this user seems off based on what we expect them to be, constantly looking left or trying to do something, accessing materials unallowed. So the fourth one, which would be the ultimate, is the autonomous AI. Automating is the first 3 parts, but the autonomous AI, which even Examity hasn't gone there, but ambitiously we're all looking to, is the fruit harvesting, the assembly line, the warehouse robots. When we get to the ideal state of proctoring, you would not even know that AI is being used to deliver these enablements. So you're using all 4 flavors. Examity is using the internet AI, the business AI. We have not gone to the advanced perception and autonomy. We are making sure customer feels I'm able to get to my test faster with less hurdles to cross in my authentication. I'm not interrupted when I'm taking a test for the false positives, but I'm being interrupted if I do the wrong thing. So I have to be within realms of behavior. And my information is being used analytically without my data being harvested. So that's how we are using the angles of AI to deliver our service.
Have either of you implemented AI as a way or in an attempt to try and better scale your proctoring operations?
Derek, may I take that one? I love operations. I think externally we have spoken about the test taker and the test sponsor, but internally, RPA, which is dubbed as AI these days, everything, including my name, AI, they put it in big bold in some of our banners, but it's not AI in the sense, but it's good algorithms that can take how have we done, how many sessions per hour, how fast have these sessions performed, in which geography and which time are we seeing more test takers for a type of test. That is the algorithms we're using internally on RPA, robotic process automation, queue management of getting the most skilled proctor to the most relevant exam with the fastest onboarding. That is where we're applying these algorithms. We have not gone to the depth of making the machine learning algorithms, but enough that we are able to mine historic data to predict this is the window where we will see most exams. So let's make sure that we staff up the most skilled proctors who are trained for that customer's type of exam. Does that make sense, Stephanie and Karen?
Yeah.
That's how we are thinking about operational AI. I call it more operational AI than AI in its pure sense. Derek?
Yeah, I mean, just first off, I should say we could have obviously a whole panel discussion around the operational aspects of
Yes.
managing online proctoring, and all of us in the industry, have really jumped through a lot of hurdles to handle the influx of volume and changes that the last 18 months have brought. My gut reaction to your answer, Stephanie, really is just to say no. Maybe that's not completely fair, but I would just say, the approach or the thought process that at least I'm trying to bring around AI is all around raising the bar of levels of service, levels of quality, level of experience. It's not really about making an operations person more efficient. It's certainly not about, I think there are models out there where, maybe you're unproctored and the AI tells you when to have a human swoop in and watch. We're not pursuing models like that. It's really about just taking our existing models and our existing staff and trying to do a better human desire for excellence. That's, I think, we're
Good.
trying to pursue. Yeah.
I think early on when ProctorU was first introducing AI into its solution, there was hope that it would bring all this operational efficiency and capacity, that proctors would be able to successfully proctor, 10 people instead of 3 or whatever. And we've never gotten there. And we were only willing to go as, we're always looking at the performance metrics. So it hasn't yielded what we had hoped for, that's for sure. But so I was just curious whether other organizations were experiencing the same. We do have a question I see from Pete. Can you guys talk about the legal defensibility and AI or machine learning and how you work with that?
Derek, I'll let you go. I'll pick up on this one because if I speak, I may speak for the whole 40 minutes on this one.
This is a big one too.
And just a reminder that if others on the call have input to any of these questions, please don't hesitate to jump in and share.
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shayla's exactly right. I mean, we could talk the whole hour about just the legal aspect. And so if there's a specific legal question in there, I would encourage maybe some clarification. So I'll give a real short answer, which is to say, we're delivering this in a, I call it the right to human determination, meaning humans are making decisions. So we never have this position where we have to defend what technology has done, because the technology has not done anything. Again, I use the backseat driver. The technology is tapping the human, the proctor is the one making the decision. And so from a kind of defensibility, we're in the same boat that we always have been. But there are other really interesting legal questions here. So I'll stop there unless there's a follow-up. I'll let Shayla go.
I'll continue on that one. I think if we look at, are we looking for efficiency or looking for effectiveness? I think all of us are commonly chasing effectiveness, not efficiency, because we can keep on getting more and more throughput. Stephanie, to your point on, are we efficient? We may be, but are we effective? We may not be. Let's talk about usage of that from a legal and compliance perspective, which is being effective locally to that region. When we talk about usage of a good AI in itself is not useful. A good AI with a great data set is very effective. So the more important question is, on what data sets have these algorithms been tested so that they can be trusted, that they don't have inherent bias in how they're being operated on.
Yeah.
If you're looking at data sets and question, what was the source of your machine learning data set? If we define those, I think we'll be more effective. Otherwise, we can apply and say one size fits all. This captures every object. Imagine an AI algorithm given the task of proctoring my exam would be a nightmare for it. There's at least 200 objects for it to determine and raise a flag that the globe is possibly another person trying to steal content from test or assist me, which is such a false positive. So from an effective perspective, effectiveness, we want to be sensitive to the time of the test sponsor. We don't want to give them 800 flags. Oh, by the way, 2 of them are useful, go hunt for them, because you have this magical sort option on the right, is almost being brutal on the test sponsor. So we are looking at effectiveness from that perspective of, are we using the right data sets? Can we certify, and with an accuracy that we have done our due diligence? If somebody challenges that it has inherent bias, are we talking to the industry experts whose only life is AI? We spend a few hours, they spend a few hours per hour in this only subject. We are consumers of AI ourselves as enterprise. So I think that research-based approach to AI is helpful. Measuring the effectiveness is helpful. And saying that trust us, we got this covered is the worst answer to give in the compliance departments. It is saying, this is the data on which we have used it. Based on our knowledge, we think it is right. Please tell us if you're on the right track. And that transparency is effective only when we share that with our customers, saying that this is the information we know. If you're deploying a solution in Germany, if you're deploying it in Middle East, if you're deploying it in Asia, if you're deploying it in Canada, we have to give them clarity on where the data is being managed, the sovereignty part of it, where the data sets have been used, and if AI is even used at all, because AI is such a noise that there's no signal. So we have to make sure we separate a programming if then condition from an AI and clarify AI is not used in here. It was just our programming abilities. But that's a very long-winded answer, but it covered so many topics, and happy to welcome any follow-up questions.
And it's interesting because Brody had a question, how you're dealing with bias with AI. And I think, Shiloh, you really addressed that in your response. Brody, I don't know if you got your question answered, or if there's another, if you want to rephrase it in a way.
No, I just, the way I'm looking at it is so if you go back to what is the legal issue that everyone's dealing with, it really comes into why is someone going to come after it? It has to do with bias, and that we're making decisions, we're targeting things, it's
Right.
and so on. And I guess I'm just not clear, and what is that right answer? And I'm just kind of curious how everyone's approaching it. How, for instance, one of the ways that the rollout of AI in different organizations is to really just slow it down. Like I liked what Derek said. What did you call it?
Right to human determination.
Right to human.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll be more blunt about it. It is, how do you make sure you're not programming something that's going to
Yeah.
target after someone in a certain way?
Yeah.
And the same thing goes with content development. The same thing's going with this. The same thing goes with how, for instance, like you're talking about the specifics of the test actually running, and you're making determinations based on that. But what about just the check-in process? Like, is that being reviewed? How does that, I don't know if we have representation from third parties who are doing all those biometrics that come in, that are using AI to streamline those things. So it's, Karen, it's not like I can say it's a great answer or not. It's just a broader question across the board. And I guess maybe probably the better question is, how are you ensuring that you're evaluating it from all angles? So we as an industry, not like individual companies, we as an industry are approaching it properly. Does that make sense?
If I may, Brody, I think you bring up some really good points on the speed of going slow. As an industry, when new technologies seem to promise everything, we need to watch how fast do we go as an industry, because we don't want to get too far ahead and have a few candidates really report that their graduation could not be completed because some technology came in the way and made decisions for it. So we need to, as an industry, look at how fast do we go from a technology angle, from a compliance angle, from a privacy and security angle, and keep all of these in line, have these common consortiums and understandings of, if we apply, commonality is not applied right now across the board. Some have gone deep, some have gone light, and there are some upstarts who say that the West world is here and you don't need progress anymore. Everything can be done with machines. And I think machines won't replace humans anytime that I know. And it's kind of sad as a tech guy to say that. They will be around to assist for a while. And the while is very broad. To your point, I think if we dial down the pace of adoption and dial up the pace of awareness and understanding and commonality definition for everyone to use, it's not there yet in AI. I think from a privacy and security and ethical bias and these decisions, the data set clarity itself is not aware. As researcher, my personal goal would be to share what data sets have been used for what purposes and see more of that in the industry to be visible before we tell the consumer, trust me, use this, if that makes sense.
Good answer, thank you.
I'll add maybe a few comments, if I may, Stephanie.
Please.
Yeah.
You know, there is a lot in this answer, and there's a lot of topics we've touched on. I'll just mention a few. With all of these AIs, Shiloh really talked about where's the data set coming from. And for the most part, at Pearson VUE, we're just trying to use best in world technologies versus developing our own models, just for that reason. You know, and we're not using our candidates' data to train. There's some legal questions there. But even the best in the world, of course, is still not bias free. And you apply sort of layers of use. So, you know, there are things you can do, apply to models or apply, it's got to be consistent over how many sort of samples, if you will. I was just looking at, you know, Brody, I think you talked about, well, how do you even measure the impact? Because it's one thing about what are these APIs doing? It's another, what's the real world result that's happening? And so I was just looking at some data. We've been creating some dashboards and looking at how the real world performance, the real world impact to candidates around the globe. So we kind of look at what's the experience to somebody, and, you know, you can kind of pick countries that have perhaps, you know, more ethnic homogeneity as samples of how it's performing. And so that's been some really interesting data to look at. Data retention, I don't know if there's a question. about data retention, but that clearly varies around the globe. And so I think, unfortunately, with this stuff, everybody else in this call can sure agree, a lot of lawyers get involved, and there's a lot of lawyers monitoring local jurisdictions and what's allowed, what can you collect, how long can you keep it, what can you do, and these things are changing rapidly right now, so it's a lot of work.
May I ask just one follow-up question for you all, just to weigh in? And sorry, I don't know what the format for today is. I was just coming to listen, and of
No,
course,
that's perfect. It's perfect,
That's
Brody. That's what we want.
this is a
You're
juicy
good.
topic.
Mhm.
Honestly, a lot of this stuff is relevant in some of the other conferences that are coming up, which is pretty fascinating. Is how much, so we attack this from developing things, and we develop things across the board. We write new algorithms, we come up with new scripts or whatever, and we're reviewing things. And there's two pieces that really come to my mind as we start rolling out and you guys try new things. We do it without the true knowledge of the end user's choice, right? And I think there's some states or some countries where they will go and they evaluate, that you can opt in, opt out. If there's an AI, you can kind of, I think over in California, you can opt out of this type of stuff. But what about, like, how much are you developing on that very front end, the acknowledgement, and then communicate upfront a path to remediation if they feel like it's wrong? So instead of making it a hard process on to go say, hey, I have an issue, hey, I don't think this was fair, like, you just communicated up front. Has that been, I know that's an odd question, but has that been addressed with any of you?
Brody, maybe I might need a follow-up clarification here. I will say this is an area where I think we are evolving as an industry from a lot of legalistic type of disclaimers to more clear English descriptions of what's going on. So people, it's not this big long scroll with a checkbox at the bottom, but kind of a clear, here's what's going on, here's what you need to know. And so that is something that I think we're in the middle of right now, evaluating how to make these things more transparent. But you asked a specific question about how do they challenge the result, and that maybe I'd like other people can chime in here, but a little more, because as a candidate, how do you know what action has been taken because of a human or because of technology? You don't, as the candidate, these things are completely opaque and you don't know. So I don't even know what the candidate would be challenging. At the end of the day, if they get revoked, it's a human that revoked them. That's what they're challenging.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go on. I was going to clarify my question a little bit if it would help.
No, please, Brody, do. Go ahead.
So it goes back to my original point when I first jumped in about when Karen asked me what did I mean by the other question, is slowing things down. And I love the whole concept that someone has a choice whether or not they can use a proctor and AI and so on. But it's that communication up front, Derek, that is what I'm thinking about. And by the way, it could be a completely awful idea of what I'm throwing out there, and it just doesn't make any operational sense. But I think part of this group is to kind of challenge those mindsets as we're trying to figure it out. But you communicate up front, this is what we're doing. It's different than what you've done before. If you have a question or concern, you don't even have to use negative terms. Like I'm saying negative terms because we're all just chatting. But if you have questions about the result of this afterwards, please, here's the path to do that, instead of making it. And what my whole point behind the whole question is what becomes a legal problem is when you make it hard and they think that they're being targeted and so on. So if, let's say, I communicate up front, I'm doing, like, I love it, simple language, simple stuff. I'm doing X, I'm doing Y. Hey, if you have any questions, want to follow up, you want to challenge or whatever, you can follow up through there, because then it looks like it's a full transparent process. And like I said, it might be a stupid idea. I don't know, but it's just something where I'm like, how do you change the dynamics as you're dealing with this evolution?
May I add one line? I think as we speak about for the consumer, the test taker, who we are trying to enable take a test and demonstrate their competency, earn their credits, their badge to get into a career progression, uh, say that they're a proud mom who finally finished school. We are enabling so many users with different backgrounds coming in. When we apply mass customization, which is in itself ironic because you're customizing and at mass, we want to make sure that when we say you have the choice, you have the ability to acknowledge, you have the ability to agree, we need to figure out a common ground where we are able to give a PhD candidate finishing their last exam to a certified exam of a high stakes exam to a community college test. Are we simplifying the content, to Derek's point and Brody's, in a way that's understandable? Are we making it overcomplicated and assuming everyone understands what an NLP means, what a machine learning algorithm's deep definition is? We can't assume someone's coming to finish their exam. So that word I will use very carefully is empathy. If you understand that from a human context, as don't assume everyone has learned about AI and read about AI 3 hours a day. When you provide these agreements, to Derek, your point, and Brody, simplify it to a point they understand. We safeguard your data. We will alert you if you do something that's not in alignment with the rules of the environment. We want to prepare you so you demonstrate these behaviors correctly. We are not here to catch you, but at the same token, we apply the discipline of, if you are here to game the system, we have measures in place to exactly put you in the same zone as everyone else. So we're not here in the catch you doing the wrong thing business. We are in the enabling you to do business, and without using the jargon. I think one fundamental thing, at least I have learned, is the lesser you use jargon of what true AI is, the more people will start trusting it, that it is not as complex as it is made out to be, because it's easy to become scientific and very knowledgeable and deep and pontify on this topic, but it's very hard to walk into a class of 22, 12-year-olds and explain AI. Having crossed that challenge yesterday when they're back to school, I'm here to tell you, they know far more than any one of us in this room ever could imagine. So we are dealing with a very wide range of audience, and there's information decentralized, democratized, publicly available. Just like healthcare, everything is available in Google, which is very dangerous because it's not vetted data. It is somebody's opinion of what it is. Social media has their opinion on AI. Educators have research-based depth. So we need to find out a harmonious common ground. If that helps kind of put context into when we have this 18-page scrolling thing and say, click at the bottom, we need to make it one page. And that applies from a PhD to someone just beginning college year one, if that helps.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that makes a lot of sense. I think that we do need to simplify and put things in layman's terms. It's kind of gotten out of hand. For sure.
To share a thought I had on that as well, just in response to what Brody was saying, I think of what's the intent behind the AI. When I go and look on the web at an appliance for my kitchen, and then everything on Facebook for the next 2 weeks has all different kitchen appliances and all the advertising, that's a use of AI that I clearly didn't approve, but the intent was to market to me and increase profits, where testing providers are using AI to enhance the security and the integrity of the program. So sometimes I think to look at the intent behind the AI and whether that justifies someone needing to be approved to be exposed to it. Just a thought. I'm not so sure in our environment if it would make sense to get approval of exposure to it.
No, Karen, I would say in that specific example, if I was looking up for a book, I bought a book on AI. If I'm recommended 5 books on AI, that's okay. But if I'm asked for consent, we are going to use your search for this book to recommend more books on AI. Would you be okay with this? At least it's respectful of me when that question is asked. The fact that you search for an appliance and it shows you every possible thing, including 50 recipes that you can use the appliance with, you didn't ask my consent. So I think consent and agreement is important. And by the way, it falls into the classic tailored content, internet AI. The simplest language I could use it is internet AI. It's tailored content with or without consent, but I think consent is better.
Correct, correct.
I'm curious for other people's opinion here. This conversation has been around disclosure and approvals for AI. Or Brody, I love what you were saying just about customer support. If you have a concern, but I don't know. I mean, AI is kind of a boogeyman in some regards, but again, I'll just lump it into it's part of a larger suite of automation and technology that's applied to a user. I mean, you can have this recommendation engine that doesn't use AI, but still kind of gets the same sort of results. So I'm kind of curious how much it's worth calling out AI because there's candidate concerns, or whether it's just bundled into a broader set of technology, opaque or transparency.
Yeah, super interesting. Well, we're kind of coming to the end of our time, and we want to leave a few minutes at the end to talk about our topic for next month. So let's do one final question, unless we have other questions from the group. But where do you see AI headed? What would you say is the future of AI? Big question, but interesting to hear your perspectives.
I'll go all futuristic, Derek, after you. So I'll reserve my.
Yeah, I don't think I really have a very interesting answer here. We're not trying to push the envelope with AI. We're kind of following what's proven technology at this point in time. I mean, and the technology is evolving rapidly. So, who knows? In the back of my head, I often think about, we say, well, can AI replace a human, right? And I think if we're in the Gartner hype cycle, we're kind of entering the trough of disillusionment right now. I think about these voice activated smart speakers we all have in our house, and voice recognition was kind of terrible. I'll use a nice clean word for years and years. And somewhere I read a study that said voice recognition had to get to 97% accuracy before it was like usable for the average person. And then boom, it was everywhere. So, I mean, I'm kind of relaying that story to say, I mean, maybe there's some magic threshold we cross and things change. But at this point in time, there's just so much noise with AI. It's hard to see that changing, at least in the near term, which is to say, 1-2 years. I'll leave it at that.
So I would say, in terms of forward looking, we need to look at the concept of dialing it down. When cars came out, they said we'll have flying cars by millennium and it would be Star Wars. But we are just looking to hunt for a favorite MP3 in the car even now, and texting while we drive, dangerously enough. I just observe anyway. So in our future of where AI can help is it can process massive amounts of data that is not possible from a human context to help you prepare the right environment. I mean, what are we doing here, which is helping someone take a test, demonstrate their abilities in a remote environment, which is where AI can assist is prepare you with the right environment. So it could be a wizard that could say, what test are you trying to demonstrate? What are you trying to accomplish? What environment are you trying to take this in? Let me run a recommendation. At a very, very foundational level, we do the classic system check. Hey, you have a webcam, you have a microphone, you have decent internet. I think that is very 101. It could scan the environment, pre-preparation of the environment. It could prepare you better for the test. We, in this meeting, if we sit in the right environments, we perform better as humans. Going back to the foundational theme of the desire for showing up as an intelligent, knowledgeable human who can advance in my personal and professional goals. If AI as a tool can be deployed that will keep my data secure, but give me some directional guidance of setting up my environment correct as a test taker, give me corrections, but decisions being human, advices and suggestions and recommendations from a machine, I think is a balance for test taker. On the test sponsor side, let's not focus so much on protecting the test, but actually seeing what is a test taker trying to do. Do I focus on the quality of material I'm giving to test the understanding of the material for the test taker? And AI can be used by test sponsors to ream through materials that are digitally available now at length and say, here's a rating for your test content. I rated this as 3 on 10 because you really didn't do the right test design. You have enemy items in the test. Those are what AI can help the test sponsor create a better test, not just reuse what they did copy paste from last year. I did some of the tests, but I will not admit in an open forum. As an educator, we look for history to create future. I think AI is the fastest capability that can process history and then give recommendations for the future. I know that's very broad-ended, but I think that is a way. Test environment guidance for the test taker, test material preparation guidance for test sponsor, and for the providers, all of us here, some guidance for us saying, this is the way you want to deliver your service, this is the way you want to stay away from it. To Brody's some points of don't go too fast, too furious, dial down on usage of technologies. Now, AI has no emotion, so actually it will be naive enough to recommend not to use it if you use it right.
Thank you. Wow, this was a great discussion. I really appreciate both of your insights and
Thank you.
the questions that came from the group. And Brody, you can ask as many questions as you want. That's part of the discussion. But we just want to spend a couple minutes at the end here talking about the next topic. So next month, the group had talked about having a session on AI and the use in exam development. So what you were talking about, Shailu, with creating a better test, like how can we use AI to create a better exam, to make exams better at measuring what they're supposed to measure? And so just wanted to open up the floor to any questions that the group has that they would like to see answered. We're going to assemble a similar panel with slightly different individuals that have more of a background in exam development and have questions that they can answer. So we'd like to always provide them with some questions ahead of time. So just opening it up to any questions people might have about the use of AI with exam development.
So, Stephanie, it's Steve.
Yeah.
That sounds really interesting, but should we broaden it a little bit so it's not just AI in test development, but new technology in test development?
Yeah, I like that.
Pretty narrow.
That makes sense.
And there's
Yeah.
a ton going on with different kinds of technologies. Yeah, okay.
I like that. I like that.
And we may have actually used the word AI for the topic, Stephanie and Karen, but we actually talked more technology and used the word AI where if we actually went through the whole recording and used AI to replace the word AI with technology, every answer we said here and every discussion would equally apply.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So with that in mind, what questions do you have around new technology being used in exam development?
Yeah.
Well, so, all right. More innovative designs. So different technologies allow for more innovative, secure, better measuring designs. We could look at that topic. We could look at different item types and how technology is enabling different item types. We could look at kind of the intersection. I just had this conversation last night between learning, gaming, and measurement. I think that whole avenue is going to be opening up in really ways we can't even think about yet. And then there's performance testing, of which many members here, and maybe questions like how can we broaden, because a performance test often is kind of narrowly focused in what it's able to measure. How can we broaden that? Those are things that just pop in my mind.
Yeah, those are, I like that.
It's excellent.
Automatic item generation too, I think would be interesting to talk about. Are people using it?
Yes. for
Yeah.
sure.
I
Funny you
had
should mention that
pre-knowledge of the
because I've been
next
thinking
session.
about that too. Yeah.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Shayla.
No. I had pre-knowledge of the next session. So I was using some of that teasers for the next session as part of answers for the last one. I did
Yeah.
not, but I think they're so interrelated.
Yeah,
You cannot have a good text experience without discussing about how the test was created. So this is almost a twin. You can't separate
Mhm.
one from the other. So it's a perfect topic for the next cycle. And I have learned really good insights, great questions, and love to contribute and also participate in the next one. Though it doesn't talk about our delivery of what we do as a business right now, it's relevant and very integral to what we are supposed to manage as part of our. So please feel free to include me as a learner. Happy to
Okay.
listen in and learn.
good.
Excellent.
Any other question ideas? I jotted down quite a few. The other thing that people are welcome to do is to send questions to ITCC or Karen or myself between now and then, and we'll make sure they get added to the agenda. And I think we're pretty much out of time. Thank you so much for attending today. Do we have anything else, Inga, that we need to mention?
No, just thank you very much for attending today. Thank you, Shaylu and Derek, for your
Pleasure.
insights. It was a really great session. Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you,
thank
everyone,
you.
very
And
much.
Thank
Just,
you all.
hey, shout out to Stephanie and Karen for herding cats. Thank you, ladies.
Indeed.
Yeah, appreciate you moderating.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah,
very much.
thank
everyone.
you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Yeah.